Now, CNN hired Andrew McCabe, formerly of the FBI. He was fired from the FBI. He was accused of lying in a leak investigation. And people on the right said, well, you're hiring McCabe. Well, why can't Fox hire Spicer? Is there a difference? Why can't Fox hire Sanders? Is there a difference? Do you see a difference?
Of course there's a difference. Andrew McCabe is going to bring serious expertise with respect to the FBI and investigations, and he in no way was accused of standing in front of to the American people and lying to them. He was accused of a lack of candor and talking to the press. The proportion, the scale, and the substance are utterly not comparable.
Is that a problem you find, Daniel, more broadly? The two wrongs don't make a right sort of behavior, the false equivalence behavior that goes on a lot? I find in my Twitter feed and my mentions, I get a lot of Trump supporters saying, every politician lies, so what's the big deal about Trump?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Wow. Brian Stelter there, the host of CNN's Reliable Sources, with contributors Erin Carmen and Daniel Dale discussing the CNN's decision to hire Andrew McCabe. Here to discuss that with us right now, the one and only Joe DiGenova, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia and WMAL legal analyst. Joe, your buddy got a job.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a marriage made in heaven. Andrew McCabe and CNN. Just put it in your mind for just a second. Here is an officially sanctioned, government-approved liar. The Inspector General has concluded in a formal government document that he lied under oath. He lied also while not under oath. He was fired. He's disgraced. He was referred for criminal prosecution. It is the perfect person to be a contributor to CNN. They are where the New York Times is right now, CNN. They are in a state of utter disrepair. That blathering by Brian Stelter, I mean, he really is an embarrassment to all people in the media, but particularly television. He is a Class A moron. And to babble the way he did with those idiots on that panel, I mean, I don't even know who any of them are. They have the most unknown and unknowable people I have ever seen. It's amazing. It's pathetic, but it is, again, this is where American journalism is today. To the extent that CNN can be called journalism, it's the airport cable news of record. That's what they're referred to as. It's the one, you go into an airport, you can't hear what's being said, you just see the CNN logo. You don't know what they're talking about. So that's where we are. It's perfect. Put him on.
What do you think? I mean, look, CNN has hired a ton of people like this. They've hired, Clapper. They've hired James Comey's buddy, one of Comey's assistants. They've hired now this guy, Andy McCabe. And it's one thing to be a journalistic outfit. It's quite another to hire a bunch of spokespeople from the government to serve a political cause, isn't it?
Well, these are not journalists, and CNN is no longer a journalism organization like the New York Times and the Washington Post. The New York Times, as you know, has declared war on the president. They've shifted from the Russia hoax to racism, and now they've told us that the country was founded on slavery in 1619. Of course, there was no United States in 1619. The people at the New York Times and the CNN are of a pair. They are the same thing. They are now activists. They are people who want to fight someone, not cover someone as journalists. They are at war with the President of the United States. They want to destroy him. They have abdicated all responsibility. They are no longer worthy of being listened to, watched, or read. That's where they put themselves. And you know what? They don't care.
Joe, you were on with Lou Dobbs on Wednesday, and during that interview, you said that the NSA has every Clinton email. They have the 30,000 missing emails and the deleted Strzok texts, and pondered that maybe John Durham has them. And we got a tweet from listeners who want you to address that and want to know, does John Durham have them, and will we see them?
Well, the answer to that question is I don't know what John Durham has, but if I were John Durham, I would have them. So my conclusion is he has them, because that's the way a real prosecutor works. Make no mistake about it, the NSA has all of Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. They have everybody's emails. They have yours, mine. They are stored out in Utah in a gigantic facility with hundreds of thousands of mainframe computers that store all this stuff. It takes special orders from a court to get access to them, but they are available. I cannot believe that the FBI didn't access those documents at NSA. By the way, have you ever heard anybody talk about this? Isn't it fascinating that nobody wants to talk about the fact that her 30,000 deleted emails are stored very nicely at NSA?
I didn't even realize that. I'm shocked right now that they collect. It's like collecting my mail.
They collect everything. They're not allowed to look at it. Everything that comes through the big the switches, they're called switches in the United States. That's how we pick up all the intercepts of communications overseas, besides the extensive spying that we do by intercepts overseas through satellite and through microwave interception on the ground. Every switch goes through this country. The switch, and everything is in there. It's not just the United States that we pick up. We pick up stuff from everybody in the world. That's how we spy on people. That's how we find out about stuff. They use that stuff to get FISAs. That's the database that the Obama people used to spy on Americans illegally, according to the FISA court, for 4 years.
Joe, let me ask you about this in general, this government surveillance effort. Part A of my question is, do you think that the Trump administration is working to accelerate this type of surveillance, or are they working to unwind it? And part B is, there was a report in the Washington Post on Thursday that the Trump administration is considering a proposal to use Google, Amazon, and Apple devices to collect data on users who exhibit characteristics of mental illness that could lead to violent behavior. They're calling it HARPA, an allusion to DARPA, the Health Advanced Research Projects Agency. What do you make of those things?
Well, I don't know about the collecting data on Americans to create a mental health profile. I don't know anything about that. I'd like to see something written about it. I missed the article.
Sure.
But theoretically, you can do that, but the legality of that is open to question. And what was the A part of the question?
The A part was, do you think that the Trump administration is unwinding domestic surveillance, or are they making it worse?
Here's what I think they're doing. Once Admiral Rogers left NSA and they put another career person in from, it's always a military person. It's Department of Defense, so there's always either an admiral or somebody in charge of NSA. I don't know that they're winding down anything. As long as they're spying on people outside the United States, I don't want them winding down a thing if they're spying on people overseas.
Right.
If they're spying on Americans, I don't want them lying to the FISA court the way the Obama administration did. By the way, for the record, I can report categorically that the Inspector General has found that all 4 FISA warrants were illegal. They were based on false information supplied to the FISA court. Michael Horowitz has concluded that all 4 FISA warrants were illegal from the get-go, which means that Comey lied on the first one. Whoever signed the other 3, including Rosen Stein, the masterful savant who ran the department like the fool that he was for 2.5 years, they were all false. And if they didn't know they were false, they were so incompetent and stupid. Of course, Rosenstein was just trying to pass the buck because all he could think about was his next job, which he hoped would be a circuit judgeship. But all 4 warrants were illegal. Now, remember, we've been talking about this for 2 years and came to that conclusion 2 years ago. I'm delighted that the Inspector General has caught up.
Okay.
Wow.
Joe, can you stick around with us for a second?
Yeah.
I want to ask you more about this.
Yes.
Because you've created, of course, more questions. I love to ask them.
All right, we're here with Joe DiGenova, and Joe just told us that all 4 FISA warrants have been deemed illegal. Joe, when was this decided? Why have we not heard anything about this until now? This is big news.
Well, the Horowitz report is done. It's being circulated. So obviously people are talking and stuff gets out, little bits and pieces. But, this is a no-brainer. Everybody knew that the FISA warrants were illegal. Mm-hmm. They were based on a false premise. You will recall that when the Bureau, as it was trying to figure out, just remember, everybody has to remember the sequence. When Admiral Rogers went to the FISA court in 2016 and said all of this spying's been going on illegally, and the FISA court cut off access to these databases where you could spy on Americans, what did the Bureau do when it no longer had its 3 contractors getting illegal spying information? It went to FISA. It had to figure out a way to spy on the Trump people, so it tried to get FISA warrants. It didn't matter to them whether the information they had going to the court was truthful. So when they went the first time to get a Carter Page FISA warrant, they were denied. Then they got the Steele dossier, and it was granted. 4 warrants were granted with the Steele dossier, which we know was a piece of fiction, a piece of Russian disinformation created specifically for Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Perkins Coie, Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, Nellie, and Bruce Orr. This is so simple. This is childish. This is so banana republic. And these idiots hire a guy who was at the center of this corruption, Andrew McCabe. I cannot wait until the report of the Inspector General comes out and watch how Brian Stelter and Chris Cuomo and the morons at CNA figure out how they're going to either put him in a box in cold storage for a year or put him on television and ask him questions. Guess what? It's going to be the box in cold storage.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions on what you've just told us. Joe, for one, I didn't personally realize that there was a denied FISA warrant for Carter Page. That was the first step?
That is correct.
Okay. And
they didn't get it because they didn't have enough information. So they created the dossier and got it, knowing the dossier was false.
Is it your understanding that the only new information was the Steele dossier?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as for Admiral Rogers, who you've talked about many times and how he's been the one guy who was calling out the problems here, do you know if he was consulted at all or spoke to for the Inspector General report?
I actually do not know that, but I cannot believe that he has not been.
Yeah, and so what's the deal with his low profile? How come we haven't heard from him, and do you expect we will?
Oh, my goodness. The reason for his low profile? Because unlike John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and the rest of these criminal, thug, dirty cops, corrupt intelligence officer, he is a patriot. He does not believe it is his duty to go out and besmirch anyone, even if he disagrees with them. He is a man of honor. He is a total professional. And as I have said before, all of the villains in this story are lawyers. The only hero is a military officer, an admiral. The people in this country should be grateful for the kind of people that we have in our military and who they are. I want Michael Rogers, the admiral, on a friggin' coin or a bill.
Yeah, there may be, if this all gets unwound and he's at the center of doing that, there may be a medal in his future as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how important is he in the end to all of this? Would any of this happen? Would we know any of this without him?
It is highly unlikely that we would know anything if Admiral Rogers had not done what he did when a young compliance officer at NSA came to him and said, "Admiral, I'm finding some anomalies in the 702 database inquiries from some contractors at the FBI." And Admiral Rogers said, "Look into it, please." The guy came back and said, "This is really bad."
Yeah.
And Rogers said, "I want a full-scale audit, and the rest is history."
Joe, you mentioned that of course, we started off this segment by talking about how you said the Inspector General report will indicate that all 4 of the FISA warrants against Carter Page were illegal. But you also stipulated that they may or may not have known they were illegal, suggesting that there was some ignorance involved here. How important would it be if the government can't?
What I meant by that is people like Rosen Stein, who claims, by the way, under oath, that he did not read the FISA application that he signed. He said, "I let others explain it to me in a meeting, and there's a reason for that." Now, none of the idiots on the committee ever asked him what he meant. Well, what do you mean you didn't read it? And you didn't read it for a reason. What do you mean? You didn't want to know? You didn't have enough time?
Right.
This is pretty important. You're spying on the President of the United States. Do you think you might want to figure out, you think you have enough time, Rod, to sit down and read it? Listen, this guy is such a fraud, Rosen Stein. He's such a Svengali. His world is pretense. He preens. He's just like Comey. He carries himself with this. He talks about these great ethical and legal concepts. The guy's a fraudster.
But Joe, we've often seen referrals from the Inspector General handed off to the Justice Department that go nowhere, and I'm concerned in this case that that'll be the same thing, especially if ignorance is a way out of criminal liability.
Here's what I think. I would not put my money on criminal prosecutions of anyone. I would not put my money on it. And the reason for that is I wrote an op-ed piece for Fox News a month or two ago when Bill Barr announced some things. And I said the reason Bill Barr is there is because he wants to restore confidence in the decision-making process about prosecutions. He doesn't want political prosecutions. He wants factual law enforcement cases based on evidence, on law, and on Justice Department policy, not singling out your enemies or people that you don't like. That is his standard. And for that reason, I think people need to be very cautious about their expectations about whether or not he's going to bring cases. It's difficult to tell.
Right.
That doesn't mean that people may not have broken the law. It doesn't mean that you could make a case. There are public policy considerations about whether or not you bring a case. Now, that doesn't mean you don't put out for the public record everything that went on and allow people to make their own decisions as good citizens about whether or not they like what these public officials did.
Well, thank you,
At a
Joe.
minimum, we're going to get that.
Well, you heard it from Joe. That's right. Okay, so expect the truth, but not necessarily prosecutions. Joe DiGenova, thank you as always, sir.
You bet.